I'm a psychiatric nurse, and early in my career, I worked at a residential mental health facility. One of our residents was an elective mute, which means that he couldn't talk, but there were no medical reasons as to why. He had spoken earlier in his life and, in fact, seemed quite normal back then, with the exception of being close to 7 feet tall. He'd been raised in the Deep South and joined the military when he was 19. But one night he vanished. He was declared AWOL, and eventually he was declared missing and dead. 10 years later, a 7-foot-tall man walked into a VA hospital emergency room in my part of the Midwest and said to the receptionist, "My name is Marion Duchan," not the real name, "and I've been dead for 10 years. These were the last words he ever spoke. He was covered with dust, and he was wearing the same clothes he'd been reported to be wearing the night he vanished. His social security number had not been used, and he had no identification on his person. However, they were able to identify him, I guess via fingerprints. The family was notified, but they said they had already grieved their lost man, and that whomever was claiming to be him simply could not be. They demanded not to be contacted again. Marion paced all day every day, moving his mouth that looked like talking or muttering, but no sounds came out. He had an unnerving habit of throwing his head back with his mouth wide open, as if he were laughing heartily, but not even a breath could be heard. If I talked to him, he appeared to listen, periodically throwing his head back in that laughter-mimicking way of his. Various medications were tried, but they did not affect him either positively or negatively. Occupational therapy did nothing because Marion would just grin and, unless told to stay put, he'd get up and start pacing again. On my last day at that job, the last thing I saw was Marion, pacing in the parking lot, throwing his head back to laugh. Later I wondered if all along I'd been dealing with a ghost. All these years later, I still don't know. It was a quiet Saturday evening when a group of friends decided to go camping in the woods. The group consisted of 4 young men and 1 woman, all in their early 20s. They were excited to spend the night under the stars, sharing stories around the campfire, and enjoying each other's company. As they were setting up camp, they noticed a man who appeared to be in his mid-30s walking towards them. He introduced himself as a park ranger and asked to see their camping permits. The group handed over their permits, and the man inspected them before returning them to the group. He told them to be careful and left. The group settled in for the night, telling stories and enjoying the peaceful surroundings. However, as the night went on, they began to notice strange noises coming from the nearby woods. They brushed it off, assuming it was just wildlife, but the noises grew louder and more persistent. Suddenly they heard footsteps approaching their campsite. The group quickly realized that it wasn't the park ranger, but instead, it was the man they had seen earlier. He was holding a large knife and had a crazed look in his eyes. The man began to attack the group, stabbing each of them multiple times. Before fleeing into the woods, one of the men was able to call 911, and emergency services arrived shortly thereafter. Tragically, 2 of the campers did not survive the attack, and the others were seriously injured. The manhunt for the attacker was on, and it was discovered that he was not a park ranger, but instead a known psychopath who had been on the run for several years. After a lengthy manhunt, the attacker was eventually caught, and taken into custody. It was discovered that he had a history of mental illness and had been in and out of psychiatric institutions for years. The news of the attack sent shockwaves through the local community and the country as a whole. It was a sobering reminder that danger can lurk in unexpected places, and that we must always be vigilant of our surroundings. The survivors of the attack were left with physical and emotional scars that would never fully heal. The incident also led to increased security measures in public parks and recreational areas, with stricter regulations on camping permits and increased patrols by law enforcement. The attack on the group of young campers serves as a haunting reminder that even in the most idyllic settings, we are not immune to the horrors of the world around us.